Living alone after 60 is either the most liberating chapter of a man's life or the most quietly devastating one. And which direction it goes has almost nothing to do with circumstances. It has everything to do with 5 things most older men never think about until it's almost too late. One of these 5 facts involves something that happens to the brain within 18 months of prolonged isolation, and the research behind it is genuinely alarming. Another involves the specific reason why older men who live alone tend to either thrive extraordinarily or decline rapidly, with almost no middle ground. We're getting to all 5. But fact number 4 contains a truth about connection and purpose that I genuinely believe could change the trajectory of the next decade of your life. Stay with me. This video is not about feeling sorry for anyone. It is not about statistics designed to frighten you. It is about 5 genuine, research-backed, psychologically grounded facts about what happens to older men who live alone, and more importantly, what the men who thrive in that circumstance do differently from the ones who don't. Because living alone is not inherently a problem. For some men, it becomes the most productive, most purposeful, most genuinely alive period of their entire life. For others, it becomes something much darker. The difference is almost entirely in these 5 areas. Bold claim: the most damaging thing an older man living alone can do is treat solitude like a problem that needs solving. Because solitude isn't the problem, loneliness is, and they are not the same thing. Here's the psychology. Solitude is a chosen, intentional relationship with one's own company. It is generative, associated with creativity, self-knowledge, emotional regulation, and deep thinking. Philosophers, artists, and some of the most productive human beings in history have drawn their greatest work from periods of genuine solitude. Loneliness is entirely different. Loneliness is the painful experience of felt disconnection, the gap between the social connection a person has and the social connection their nervous system needs. It is not about physical aloneness. It is about felt aloneness. Research from Brigham Young University, analyzing data across multiple long-term studies, found that chronic loneliness carries health consequences comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The nervous system, under prolonged social deprivation, begins producing elevated cortisol levels that damage cardiovascular health, immune function, and cognitive performance. Mini story. Gerald retired at 68 after 40 years in construction management. He had been looking forward to the quiet. The first 6 months were genuinely wonderful. He read, he traveled locally, he slept without an alarm for the first time in decades. Then something shifted. The quiet that had felt like relief started feeling like absence. He wasn't doing less. He was feeling less connected to why he was doing anything at all. Gerald wasn't suffering from solitude. He was suffering from loneliness disguised as solitude. And the distinction took him 2 years to recognize. What most older men do wrong. They treat the symptoms, restlessness, low motivation, disrupted sleep, without identifying the root cause. They add activities without adding connection. What actually works? Honest self-assessment. Ask not, am I alone? But do I feel genuinely connected to people and purpose? Those are different questions with different answers. This is the fact that most people don't know and need to. Bold claim: prolonged social isolation produces measurable neurological changes within 18 months. This is not metaphor. This is documented neuroscience. Research on social neuroscience, including work from the University of Chicago's Loneliness Research Program, shows that chronic loneliness alters how the brain processes social information. It increases what researchers call hypervigilance to social threat. The brain begins scanning for rejection and hostility in neutral interactions, making normal social engagement feel more threatening than it actually is. This creates a vicious cycle. Loneliness makes social interaction feel harder. Harder interaction leads to more withdrawal. More withdrawal deepens the loneliness. And the brain, in the absence of regular positive social input, begins losing the neural pathways that make connection feel natural and rewarding. But here's the part no one tells you. This process is reversible. The brain retains neuroplasticity well into later life. Regular, genuine social engagement, not just proximity to other people, but actual meaningful interaction, rebuilds these pathways. The decline is real, so is the recovery. Bold claim, older men who thrive living alone almost universally have one thing that struggling men lack: a reason to get up in the morning that has nothing to do with another person. The psychology here draws from Viktor Frankl's logotherapy and decades of subsequent research on purpose and well-being. Human beings do not merely need pleasure or comfort to thrive, they need meaning, the felt sense that what they are doing matters in some way that extends beyond themselves. When a man's primary source of meaning was his career, and he retires, or his family, and they disperse into their own lives, the structural meaning of his daily existence can collapse without him fully recognizing what has happened. Mini story. Raymond was 64, recently divorced, living alone for the first time in 31 years. He was financially comfortable, his health was good, by every external measure he was fine. But he described his days as feeling like chapters in a book where nothing happens. A friend suggested he start mentoring young men in his trade, electrical contracting. He resisted for months, then agreed to try it once. 18 months later, Raymond was mentoring 11 young men across 2 community programs. He described the period as the most energized he had felt since his 40s. Nothing about his external circumstances had changed dramatically. His purpose had. What most men do wrong, they wait for purpose to arrive rather than constructing it deliberately. What actually works: identify what you know that others need to learn. Find somewhere that knowledge matters. Show up consistently. This is the climax. The deepest fact in this entire video. Most advice about older men living alone focuses on more. More social activities, more community involvement, more contact with family. More. But the research on subjective well-being and social connection tells a different story. Quality of connection predicts well-being far more powerfully than quantity. A man who has 2 or 3 relationships characterized by genuine mutual understanding, honesty, and care, where he can be fully himself, where conversation reaches below the surface, will consistently report higher well-being than a man with 20 acquaintances and no depth anywhere. The Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies on human happiness and existence, tracking men for over 80 years, arrived at this conclusion clearly. The quality of relationships is the single strongest predictor of late-life health, happiness, and cognitive preservation. Not wealth, not status, not physical health at 60, relationship quality. Here's the truth that most older men living alone need to hear directly. You do not need more people in your life. You need deeper connection with the people already in it, or the courage to build new relationships characterized by genuine honesty and mutual care. Surface connection at volume is not a substitute for depth at smaller scale, and mistaking the former for the latter is one of the most common and most costly errors available. Bold claim: the older men who genuinely thrive living alone share one behavioral characteristic above all others. They invest in their physical body with the same seriousness they invest in everything else. This is not about vanity. This is about neuroscience. Exercise produces BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports neuroplasticity and cognitive function. It regulates cortisol, the stress hormone that chronic loneliness elevates. It produces endorphins and serotonin that directly counter the mood dysregulation that isolation can produce. A consistent physical practice, whatever form it takes, is not supplemental to thriving alone. For many older men, it is the foundation upon which everything else is built. The men who struggle most are almost universally sedentary. The men who thrive are almost universally moving, walking, lifting, swimming, cycling, something, with genuine consistency. The body and the mind are not separate systems. What you do with one directly determines what is available in the other. Here is the question I want to leave you with, and it deserves a genuine answer. Of these 5 areas, the distinction between solitude and loneliness, the brain changes of isolation, the necessity of purpose, the quality of connection, and the foundation of physical practice. Which one are you most neglecting right now? Not which one sounds most interesting. Which one, if you're honest with yourself, needs the most attention? Drop it in the comments. I read them all, and so do the other men watching this who are navigating the same terrain. If today gave you something real, subscribe. Every week we bring this level of honesty and depth to the questions that actually matter. See you in the next one.